the Melanie of 10 years ago really tried to write her own story and really tried to create her own path. And God would continuously go, I have a different plan for you. That's not the plan for you. And I would be so upset and so.
This is Sports Spectrum, bringing Jesus into the sports conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey, Melanie Collins, welcome to Sports Spectrum. How are you?
Thank you, Jason. I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing really well. This has been a long time coming. I'm glad we were able to connect, and we saw each other recently at a conference this past summer, and it was a good reminder to say, hey, Melanie, we got to get you on the Sports Spectrum podcast. And I do want to talk about your faith in a little bit and your journey and your walk with God. But I figure with the NFL season in full force and people can watch you on Sundays on CBS doing NFL games, I thought a great place to start would have you to take us through what a normal week of preparation for you looks like before a big game on Sunday.
Sure. And I think a lot of people are surprised when I take them through my week. It's a lot. And it's different pre-COVID and then post-COVID. We've sort of made some adjustments as time has gone on. So generally a typical week, I will usually get back from a game either Sunday night or Monday morning, depending on if it's an East Coast game or a West Coast game. If it's in the East Coast, I'm usually pretty lucky I can get home Sunday night. But if it's a West Coast game, I'm either on a red eye or I'm flying home Monday morning. So it just depends. But Monday is usually my day where I decompress from football as much as possible. It is like my one day where I'm like, I'm going to lay in bed. I'm going to go get a workout in. I'm going to just decompress from it all and not think about it until the Monday night game starts. Right. So I give myself like the afternoon. And then I always watch the Monday night football game, especially if it's, a team that I feel like I'm going to be having coming up soon. It's good prep. It's good film study. And then Tuesday, I start to dive in really to my prep. And I am, as a sideline reporter, you're looking for stories that can't be found in the media guide. You're looking for different angles on things that no one can just easily find out by looking on Twitter or on social media. So it's a lot of making phone calls, messaging guys. It is a lot of deep social media digging, but that generally starts on Tuesday and Wednesday. And then our calls with teams will usually start Thursday, and that's post-COVID. We started doing more Zoom calls with teams. Before COVID, we would leave on a Thursday night or Friday morning, and we would fly to whatever the city is where we're doing a game. And Friday was always our day where we'd meet with the home team. And we would watch practice, and then we'd have in-person meetings with the coach, with the quarterback, and with usually 3 to 4 different players. Yeah. And the guys in the booth always meet kind of on their own with the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. But that's kind of where we get the meat of our storylines for Sundays, because those are the meetings, we're so blessed to be in and so lucky to have with these guys and get to talk to them up close and personal. And that's generally where I get like most of my great stuff for Sundays. But there's a lot of prep leading up to those meetings and those calls, just to know what to ask in the Zoom meetings or in the in-person meetings. It's about knowing kind of like where you want to take a storyline and the answers that you're looking for to sort of formulate a great story for Sundays. So Friday is always our day. We watch practice, we meet with the home team, and then usually Friday nights we do a crew dinner, which the last couple of years we haven't really been able to do. Last year we were able to do it outside. Yeah. But yeah, up until before COVID, we always did like a Friday night crew dinner, a team building, go for a drink after dinner. And then Saturday, I usually spend most of my day prepping for the away team. And we would always wait until the away team got to the city. We'd go to their hotel, and then we meet with them at their hotel in a meeting room. And we talk to coach, quarterback, and 3 to 4 players generally, usually 2 offensive guys, 2 defensive guys. And then we get the bulk of our storylines for Sunday from that team. And then Saturday night, we always have a production meeting where we kind of discuss where we want to go with things in the game. And, live TV and covering games on Sundays is so interesting because you do all this planning and you try and, jot out how things are going to go and the order in which you want to do things. And then the ball kicks off and then the game happens and everything goes you just have no idea. Like everything gets thrown out the window. There are a lot of times during games where I'm just like, nope, that doesn't work anymore, and you kind of have to really adapt to what's happening in game. And so that's generally Sunday. We usually have, whether it's an early game or late game, we never have a night game unless we're like in London, but sometimes we get the 4:25 kick, which is always fun. But yeah, that's kind of the typical week. Monday afternoon, I'm usually chilling, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays full on prep. Friday, Saturdays meetings where we kind of pull everything together from there with our prep, and then Sunday's game day. So it's a lot of travel and a lot of hotel beds and sitting on airplanes, but it's all worth it. It's so much fun.
How soon do you know your assignment for a game?
Great question. So generally we get our first 4 games early to mid-August. So we'll know our first 4. And then from there on out, it can be as early as 2 weeks out, we'll know, and it can be as late as 7 days out. Sometimes there are weeks where, I'm like waking up on a Monday and I still don't know. I mean, it gets later in the season when this happens, but I'll wake up on a Monday and I still won't know where I'm going that next weekend, which I think is so exciting and fun. It makes prep a little bit more crammed and tough, but I love the surprise of like, am I going to Pittsburgh or am I going to Seattle? I have no idea. Yeah. So yeah, generally early in the season, we tend to know a little further in advance. And then as playoffs start to ramp up and everything, it'll be a little bit closer to the time. So
give me your favorite athlete or coach that you've talked to, or a few favorites that just, you're going to get something fun out of them in your few minutes that you get to chat with them.
Sure. Always love to talk to Patrick Mahomes. He is just such a grounded, down to earth, awesome individual. He's so genuine. And he's very, very open with us in the media. And that's, surprising for someone of his stardom right now to not be guarded. So I feel like we always get great stuff from Patrick Mahomes. I love talking to him. Love dealing with him. He's always so respectful and so giving of his time. And whoop, there goes one of my AirPods. So he's definitely one of my favorites. And then, gosh, we love to talk to linemen. Linemen are always just hilarious, and defensive and offensive linemen. They always have the stories, many of which cannot make air on Sundays, but they're a great time in the meetings. And then coaches, I love John Harbaugh. I always learn something from him. He's always great to deal with. He's just someone where I feel like I learn something every time I talk to him. But he's also just great. Just a really nice person and a great person to deal with. I'm trying to think who else. I feel like there are very few players and coaches that are difficult to deal with. And I guess that's probably surprising for a lot of people, but like most people that we meet with, and I'm sure it's because we're national media that's covering the game. I'm sure like the daily media, the local media, they might not be the same with, because they're seeing them every day and they're getting the same questions. But I think generally, most of the players and coaches we deal with are awesome and always give us something good, and they get it. You know what I mean? They get what we're looking for them. We're not trying to throw them under the bus or break some horrible story about them. We're just trying to, bring all that we can to the game on Sunday, and just sort of bring to light anything that they're working on in their lives, or any fun stories that they have. So
I just think about like Greg Popovich. I don't know if you ever did a sideline game when you were covering NBA with him, but like he always would make it difficult, right? Or make it hard, and it was just one of his things. Like it was a shtick almost. And I think that's got to be so hard in a moment when you're trying to just do your job and get something out of the person you're interviewing, and they're just giving you nothing. And it's like, all right, I still got to be professional here. And Pop is like that. That's kind of a shtick more than how he really is. But it's got to make it tough if you ever have those kind of moments.
It does. And I have had those moments. Bill Belichick is notoriously a coach who can be difficult.
No, really?
And especially when he's down at the half, I'm always like, oh gosh,
I know.
I got to ask him a good question. And sometimes even when I do ask him a good question, it's a nope or a yes, and you have to sort of make something out of it. And that's kind of, what you sign up for in those moments. And I love Bill Belichick, and he's awesome. And I find like he's a coach where if you talk anything but football with him, he will talk to you forever, bring up rock and roll, and he will go on an hour-long tangent. He loves to talk about Bon Jovi and rock and roll. And then when it comes down to like the X and O's and the football stuff, sometimes he's just, doesn't want to talk about it.
Give you anything. Yeah. I know a lot of people who know him or players that have played for him and said, listen, he's just the best guy in the world, and you want to go play for him. It's when he talks to the media, he just doesn't want to give you anything. It's part of his sort of strategy, I guess, as a coach.
Yeah. And in turn, it makes my job more challenging, but I almost like it in a sense. It makes it like more fun for me, which sounds weird, but I have a ton of respect for Bill Belichick. I love the guy. I think he's one of the greatest coaches ever. Yeah, certainly in those moments, it can be tough when you're sprinting to a sideline and you get one chance to ask one question and you don't get a whole lot back. So yeah, you learn over time how to deal with those situations and yeah, there are certainly people who are more difficult than others.
Of course, and you got to do your job.
Yeah.
Speaking of moments, is there one that stands out for you? Like, it may be the best moment. It just may be a memorable moment that isn't necessarily a best moment, but you've been doing this for a little while. What's one that stands out?
Gosh, let's see. I think there are two for me. One was a few years ago, and I bring up Patrick Mahomes again, but it was a Chiefs game at Arrowhead. I think it was week 17, and he threw his 50th touchdown pass. It was the season where he just went off, and I got to interview him post game, and it was just one of those moments that was just like, holy crap, I'm here in person to see this. This is so cool. I would say that stands out as one of my favorite moments. And then last year we did a game in London, and it was Dolphins Jaguars, and on paper it didn't look like that great of a game. It was like, okay, the Dolphins don't have a great record. The Jaguars haven't won a game yet. And the Jaguars won on a last second field goal. And it was just one of those games where, I don't know, it is so fun in the post game to interview guys when they haven't experienced a win yet. And they are in London and it's a last second. And it's just, I love those moments with players in the post game when they're just so full of joy and so excited. And I love those post game moments. So that was one that stood out to me for sure. It was just such a like baffling game all around. And then for it to end like that. But there are certainly, I mean, I could probably talk about 100 different, the NFL is just, it's the NFL for a reason. It's just there's always amazing moments in it.
But the London experience must've been kind of cool too, and throw off your prep a little bit because you're traveling overseas.
Very much. The London game. So I've done a London game every year for actually the COVID year, we didn't have a London game, but 3 different years I've done a game in London, and every time it is just awesome. It's tough because I'm usually flying. So like last year, for example, I was flying back from LA on a red eye on Monday, and I was taking off to London on Tuesday. So the fatigue takes over at some point. But it's really cool. I like to fly over a day or two earlier than I really need to because I like to catch up on the time, A, but B, I love London and I have some friends over there and I love to explore. So it's just always an awesome trip. And then some of the stories that you get from teams with these London games are so fun. Like, for example, we had the Rams 2 years ago, I believe it was. We had a night game with the Rams, and one of the storylines was how they brought their own ketchup because they didn't like the ketchup in London, and like the guys had to have their ketchup for their meals, and they didn't like the peanut butter in London, and so they brought like all this extra stuff like condiments because the guys just had to have their proper meals, and it's maybe a superstitious thing, and so just fun stories like that that always come out in the London games. But for some reason, our crew always seems to get one of those London games, and I'm so grateful and thankful for it. It's a great way to like break up the season. It kind of puts like something to look forward to right in the middle of the season, and I love doing the London game. Always a great experience.
Melanie Collins is our guest here on Sports Spectrum. She's with CBS Sports as a sideline reporter covering the NFL, but we're the intersection of sports and faith, Melanie, and I want to dive into that faith aspect. Before I talk about when we kind of recently were together at a conference over the summer, just take us through maybe the journey of your faith, growing up, what role faith played maybe in your life.
Yeah, I think growing up, it didn't play a big role in my life. My family was kind of a family that went to church on Christmas Eve and Easter. And my mom grew up Methodist. She's from Florida, and she went to church growing up, but it wasn't a huge priority in my family's life growing up. We were so busy with athletics. I have 2 brothers, and it seemed like we always found, something else that we were doing other than going to church. And so it really wasn't a big part of my life. And then my teens, I remember some of my friends at school were part of Young Life. And I remember joining Young Life and doing some summer camps, and I enjoyed it. And I've always been a believer, but I feel like even then I still didn't really understand it. I I didn't fully immerse myself in it. It was more just like, okay, this feels good. And, you know, I feel like I'm doing the right thing. And I believe in God, but I wasn't intentional really about it. And then I feel like as I kind of got older and I started in this career, I always, you know, I believed in God, I prayed and all of that. But it wasn't really until I moved to Nashville about 8 years ago that I really started to get more involved in my faith. I found a church here that I just love so much. It's called Crosspoint, and it's just a different experience than I ever had with church. I don't know if it was the churches I was going to growing up, but it's such a modern message. It's such a modern take on the Word of God, and I think just the churches that I went to growing up, I was bored. I didn't know really what the sermon, I couldn't decipher what the sermon was about, or I wasn't paying attention because I was sitting in a pew or, you know, whatever. And I started to find like, this isn't boring. This is amazing messaging for my life. And I was talking with a friend the other day, and we were talking about how like we were in sports and all these teams and sports have playbooks. And this is their playbook for what they do for games. And this is what they follow for success. And like, here I've had the Bible my whole life, which is a playbook for how to live your life. Yeah. And I've had it sitting here the whole time and I haven't been reading my playbook. And I think it just started to really, I felt a pull to become more immersed in it and to truly like seek out the Word of God and what He's trying to tell me in my life. And so from ever since I moved to Nashville, I had a Bible study with some girlfriends for a couple of years until they got traded. I say traded because we're married to hockey players. I'm not married yet, but I'm engaged to a hockey player. And that's kind of what brought me to Nashville. And then all of my girlfriends here are with hockey players. And so they got traded away and our Bible study ended. But I just, ever since I've been in Nashville, I have loved going to Crosspoint and hearing the message there and worshiping there. And yeah, it wasn't until really PAO this summer where I really like took that extra leap, which we will get to, which is where I saw you.
Yeah. So we can go there now because I think there's other questions that I do want to ask you about, just kind of how your faith grew and developed and even how the role of that faith played in your journey as a broadcaster. But let's just go to where we were a few months ago. We were in Colorado Springs and we were at a conference, and it's this sort of Christian conference for athletes and athletes' wives or girlfriends or fiancés in your case. Yeah. And you're there, we see each other, we give each other a big hug, and it was great to kind of meet each other in person. We've been friends for a while on social media. But I'm sitting in the back and I'm kind of one of the people that are sort of helping lead this conference and make this conference run. And you're there as an attendee, if you will, or even as the fiancé of a player who's there as an attendee. But God does something in your life. So maybe you can kind of explain what was happening to you those couple of days.
I feel like God's always doing something in my life. It's amazing.
That's very
it's amazing. So my fiance James had attended this PAO conference last summer, and we have a great friend here named Mike Fisher, who's been a big part of it for a long time. And Mike is the one who took James last summer. And James came home just raving about his experience at PAO. He called me every night from the what do you want to call it, conference. And he would go through his notes from the day, and he was just so full. Like his heart was just so full from this conference. And I was like, all right, I'm coming next summer. Like I have to experience this. And so Mike was kind enough to let us fly with him, and we attended with him, and I had no plans going into it to get baptized. I was like, I'm just going to immerse myself in all of this and see what God does in my life while I'm here. I can't wait to just meet these wonderful people. And that's like the first thing I can say about it is just the people there are so wonderful. And it's just such a group of people that I feel like I can trust. Yes. You know, it's hard sometimes when you're living in the public eye, and it's hard to feel like you can trust people. And I genuinely felt like I could trust every person in that room. So that was like the first thing that stood out to me, is just such a wonderful group of people who are open and you can trust them. But I believe it was the third night we were there, David Platt spoke. And I have never heard someone speak like this guy in my entire life. He was just incredible. Yes. And I will say, leading up to this, my fiance James and I, and then our friend Ryan, who we brought with us, he's one of our best friends in the whole world. We had plans to eventually get baptized, but we wanted Mike Fisher to do it, and we wanted him to do it out at his house at his pond. And that was kind of like something we had in our minds for a while. We didn't really have like a date put on it or anything, but we were like, we're going to have Fish baptize us, and let's do it out at his pond. It has some special meaning to us. And so that was kind of our plan. And so I had no plans to get baptized that night, but David Platt started speaking about baptism and the importance of it. And he was so powerful and persuasive in his message. And he's like, if not now, when are you ever going to do it? When are you going to do it? And I'm sitting there kind of tapping James on the leg, and I'm like, should we do it tonight? Like, what do you think? And he's like, no, I want to have Fish do it. We're kind of like going back and forth. And I'm like, gosh, I feel such a pull right now for this. And I remember him saying, everyone bow your heads. And he prayed, and he said, anyone that wants to get baptized tonight, I want you to stand up. And we did not initially stand because we had other plans.
Right.
And we kind of we're peeking a little bit. And here's our friend Ryan standing. And we're like, oh my gosh, okay. Maybe this is happening tonight. So after seeing Ryan stand and just feeling the energy in the room and feeling God's presence, we were like, why wouldn't we just do it here tonight with this amazing group of people in this incredible place where God is here already? Why would we not just do it now? And so we decided, after we sort of stood up and left the room, we were like, oh, okay, Ryan, we're doing this tonight, are we? And he's like, yep. And I'm like, we're in, let's do it. This is awesome. I can't think of a better place to do it. So we go upstairs to change quickly into clothes to wear into the pool. And I'll never forget it for the rest of my life, just walking out there. It was the most beautiful, picturesque. I mean, you were there, you saw it. It was like a full moon over the water. It was the most beautiful night you could ever imagine. And I remember just walking out there with James and Ryan, and we just kind of looked at each other and we were like, wow, if God isn't here, I don't know where he is. He is here. You could feel him, you could see him, you could feel the presence of God. And we were taken out to the pool, and one of the things we wanted to do, David Platt was doing the baptisms, which I would have loved to be baptized by him too. He seemed unbelievable, what a cool experience. But we just had it in our hearts where we wanted Mike to do it. It was just something special for us. And so Mike Fisher was able to baptize us, and he got in the water with us, along with Tim Burke, who's someone that's had an amazing, presence and influence on James's life. And I was so happy to meet him and have him there for that moment too. And the three of us got baptized at PAO this summer, and I had never been baptized. So that was
never ever.
Really, never ever. So that was something extremely special for me, something I've wanted to do for a long time. And I'll never forget it. It was just an incredible moment in all of our lives. So
it's been a few months. What was the aftermath of that? Right. Cause it's like everybody has these mountaintop moments, which we all have, and we come down from the mountaintop and it's like, oh yeah, I still have regular life to live every day, but I want to draw closer to God. Does anything change for you as far as, because you said you had that relationship that was growing anyways, but is that moment kind of a pivotal moment in the sense of, oh, I really want to dive deeper now and get to know the Lord a little more?
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, yes, it made me just be more deliberate and intentional in my walk with God. As I said, we've had this playbook my whole life and I haven't read it. And now I feel like I am carving out time and being more deliberate in filling my heart with the word of God and in studying. I can certainly be better still in the time that I make for it. Yeah, I'm no perfect Christian since being baptized, I'll tell you that. But I certainly, I'm much more deliberate and intentional with my walk with God. I'd say that's the first thing. And then I think just since being baptized, I've felt almost, I don't want to say a weight off my shoulders, but for a long time, for various reasons, things that have happened in my life or my career, I've carried, I picture it like rocks in a backpack. There's shame, there's guilt, there's fear, there's regret. And each time you have a moment happen in your life where you feel those emotions, there's kind of like a little rock that goes in the backpack. And for a long time, I've sort of felt this backpack on me full of these emotions that I've been trying to rid myself of. I've gone to therapy and I've done all these things to try and just, let go of all this. And I do feel like since that moment, I've sort of felt like the rocks out of the backpack. Like God sort of said to me, like, you don't need to carry that anymore. You are made whole, you are clean, you are made, whole in my eyes. So I just, I feel like I feel lighter. If that makes sense. I feel like I've let go of a lot of the junk I've been carrying around for a long time. So those would be kind of the two. There's no crazy like aha moment since it.
Right.
But I would say those are, I'm much more deliberate now, and I feel lighter since.
So you mentioned earlier, and we had talked about this before we even hit record, about this sort of journey of faith intersecting with this journey of broadcasting, right? And your career elevating. What's that been like? I mean, obviously now it's still very new since the baptism, so maybe there's not a whole lot there yet. There might be more as you go on to the broadcasting journey that you're going on. But how has God kind of helped you on your journey, in this career that can be very difficult?
Yeah, so much, and so much even before getting baptized.
Yeah.
I think first of all, just knowing God, you don't need to. And I still struggle with this sometimes, but my worth as a human being is no longer tied to my performance and my success in my career. Not that it ever was, but it was. I think when I was younger, I tied myself much more to that. And it's like, I don't have to perform. I don't have to be perfect anymore to be chosen and to be whole. And I think that's kind of the biggest thing as I've grown in my faith and my walk with God. Like, I've just realized, like, it's a bonus for me. Like, I go out there on a Sunday and I find every game, it's usually right after my opening hit. I'm listening to the anthem and the jets are flying over and the fireworks are going off. And I just have this moment. It gives me chills just thinking about it. Like, I get emotional talking about it because I still can't believe that this is my job in my life.
Right.
And I just take this moment and I look up at the sky and I'm just like, thank you, God. Like, I never thought I would be here. I cannot believe that this is my life, that I made it. Like, and I say made it, but like, that was my dream always as a girl. And like, I wanted to be on the NFL sideline. I wanted to be an NFL sideline reporter. And how many of us are there? There aren't many. And
Right.
I just feel so blessed and so like, I just cannot believe God put me in this position. And so everything else that happens in the game, however my performance is, that's all just extra. Like, I'm already so like, the amount of gratitude I feel is just ridiculous since being put in this position. And I am going into my 5th year on the NFL sidelines, and it hasn't changed since day one. I still pinch myself in that moment and I'm just like, oh my God, like, it's just, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. This is crazy.
No, I think it's a great job. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. But I also, it helps me to remember that when I'm no longer in that position and when I no longer have that job, it doesn't change my worth as a person or my success as a human being. Like, God bless me with that, but he doesn't care, that I'm not less worthy when I'm no longer Melanie Collins, the TV host or the sideline reporter. Yeah. And so I think my walk with God has really helped me in that aspect. And then I think early on in my career, I'm sorry if I'm getting long-winded here, but some things happened where it was my first year ever in the business. I was working for NBA TV, Turner Broadcasting. And I'll never forget, I got a text from my agent. I was sitting on the desk doing an update and she said, "Don't freak out, but there's a photo out." And I remember my stomach twisting and I'm like, oh my God, what could this possibly be? Like, I have lived my life. I went through college, like, I barely drank. I barely went out because I was so worried about screwing something up for myself.
Sure.
I honestly wasn't that into it anyway, but the truth is, like, I wanted to do everything right so that when it came time to be put in the position that I wanted for so long, that I was ready and that I had no reason, why I wouldn't be hired. Yeah. And so it was this silly picture that someone had dug into one of my friend's Facebook profiles from years ago. And it was like, as my best friend at the time, Leslie, we were both fully clothed. She was bent over and like the top of her butt crack was sticking out. And I was making some stupid face behind it. But the whole world picked it up, Deadspin, all these awful sites. And they made this big stink about it. And it was like, it felt early on like, gosh, why are they trying to ruin me? Like, why? I'm just starting out, like, give me a chance. And I think in that moment and in those years following, like, it was something that followed me for a long time. I went on auditions, at ESPN, and I had to explain to them this photo and why it was there. And it followed me for so long. I spent thousands of dollars of my own money to try and get it lowered down in Google Images so people wouldn't see it. And it was just this thing that followed me for so long. And it took me a really long time to try and understand what God was teaching me with that. And he was building my character in that and saying, you know what, you want this gig, you want this position, but you've got to toughen up first, and you've got to grow a thick skin, and you have to learn how to handle the comments and the, crap that's going to come along with it. And I feel like it's not like I'm glad it happened, but I am in a sense, because it built me into such a strong person in terms of handling, what people want to say on social media, or, just, I don't know. It was just something that I felt like God really was using that to strengthen me and to prepare me for where I am now. And then lastly, I would say my relationship with God has really helped me to genuinely cheer for and be happy for others. And I heard this sermon in church a few weeks ago, and I was like so excited to talk about it today because it stuck with me. And it was a sermon about when life overlooks you. So whether it's a job that you felt like you wanted and you deserved and you auditioned for, but you didn't get, or you're being rejected by a network or a company or something, it was like what to do in that moment. Or even sometimes it's comparison on social media. You've wanted to get married for so long, and all you're seeing is pictures of other people getting married, and you're bitter. And the whole sermon was about how God doesn't want us to live with bitter hearts. And I'll never forget this verse. It's Peter chapter 5, verse 6. It says, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time." And it's all about when someone else gets the position that you wanted, the best thing you can do is, from a genuine and pure heart, pray for them, wish them the best, wish them success, maybe even send them a letter of congratulations, and genuinely cheer for them. And you say to God, like, this wasn't the story for me, but would you please bless them? And then would you lift me up in due time when it's my time? And that just stuck with me so much. And I feel like my walk with God has really helped me, because as a woman in sports broadcasting, we are taught so much to compete with each other, and that there's not room for all of us. And, there have been a lot of times, I've been in this business for 14 years now, but in the beginning, I just remember other girls getting positions that I wanted and I thought I deserved. And I was bitter and I was envious, and it stirred up all these emotions in me. Like, why not me?
It's hard.
And it's hard. And that really, I feel like for a long time, I've been able to genuinely be happy for others in these positions, but it really reiterated to me, like, wow, what a powerful thing to be able to say, I wasn't chosen in this moment, but that's okay. It's not my door. God would have opened it if it was my door, and he didn't. So like, I'm going to pray for that person. I'm going to wish them the best. And when the right door comes along, I trust that God will open it for me. And so I think those are three kind of major ways in which my walk with Christ has really helped me in this career and in this business.
Wow. Those are great stories. Thank you for sharing, because it's a journey, right? And I think a lot of times as followers of Christ or as believers in this business, it can suck you up. It can eat you alive. I have to imagine even being a female or a woman, unfortunately, and unfairly, I think, there's pressure. You're dealing with social media and this approval thing, this comparison thing, like you mentioned. And one of the questions I was going to ask you, you kind of already answered it, but we'll go there, I think, for a second.
Sure.
Just dealing with social media. And I found, and I'm not a personality by any means, but I think just being on social media, I found out if I can't say something nice, and I fail at this a lot, I try not to tweet it. I try not. Sometimes we just got to, right? Or
it's
whatever.
hard.
It's very hard. But all you have to do is post a picture or whatever, Melanie, and you're going to get hopefully a lot of people that are saying, hey, you look great, like your photo. But then there's going to come the people that just want to be trolls to be trolls. How have you trained yourself, or how has God trained you to handle, that world that we live in? Because 15 years ago when you were getting into this, or 14 years ago, you said social was just starting, I think, to come into fray, and it wasn't anywhere near where it is right now.
It wasn't. And I think, in the very beginning is when I started to sort of understand what it was. And I'd see like the comments at the bottom of a Deadspin article, or the comments at the bottom of blogs. And that was kind of when like blogging started. And I think, most of the comments I get and most of the tweets I get and messages I get are positive, and that's such a wonderful thing. And I think it's so important to, if you live by other people's acceptance, you die by their rejection. I'll never forget that quote. And it's just like,
Great quote.
you can't really suck up all the good stuff, and you can't suck up any of the bad stuff either. It's just like, I've trained myself to just remain so neutral. And of course it's wonderful to get great feedback after a game and someone telling you like they love this story or you did such a great job. And it's hard not to internalize that and feel good from it. But I just think whether positive or negative, it's so important to just really block out the opinions of others. I mean, other than like my immediate bosses and some of my family members, I can't cater to everyone. You're never going to please everyone, and you can't care about other people's opinions. And it's a hard thing to do. And it's taken me years and years to truly be able to just go like this. Like I, for a long time, internalized what people would say about me. And they rip apart everything from your looks to the way you talk to the things you say. I mean, the amount of times people have written me like, you're only in your position because you look good. You're only there because you're blonde and you're this, it's like just completely discrediting everything I've worked hard for.
Yeah.
And it sucks. And social media is just one of those things I feel like you have to, I'm sure anyone that looks at my social media pages, you can tell I don't share a ton of my life. I probably share 5% of my life on there. I like to post cute outfits and I share football. And like, other than that, I don't share a whole lot. No one knows I'm engaged. No one knows that I,
Right.
had to put my dog down a month ago that I've had in my life for the last 8 years. And I'm still struggling with like grasping that and with, just mourning my dog and like things like that. I don't like to open up too much to give people that opportunity to comment on my life.
Yeah.
And so I think, the more you can just decide what you're going to give people, and just, I don't know, I feel like God has called me to just be more private in my life and to truly just love what he's given me in my life. And I don't need to put it all out there. Like, I don't even feel the pull to share much of anything anymore, good or bad. And I think that's a good thing, because I think sometimes you can get really caught up in wanting to share everything and wanting to share every aspect. And it just opens up the door for more people to comment on it. So to close, I would just say, whether good or bad, I try not to really pay attention to any of the comments. And when people write me something extremely nasty, I'm able to just pray for them and just say, clearly that person is not happy in their life and has not found God. And I just pray that God would touch their heart, because anyone who is writing people nasty things on the internet clearly is empty inside and missing something in their lives. So
that's a great way to look at it. I hope people listening hear that in social media, whether you're a personality or someone that's out there in the public sphere that people know, or whether you're just an average person who's struggling with identity or approval or whatever it is through social media, it's just there's a lot of emptiness there. I think that's why I love the gospel so much and love hearing about people who have responded to the gospel, because there becomes something bigger and deeper and more purposeful and joyful in their lives than just what this world can offer us, this fleeting world can offer us. All right, my last question for you, Melanie.
Sure.
Curious what your answer might be. So what's the biggest difference between the Melanie Collins from maybe 14 years ago, we'll say, or even 10 years ago, and the one that, coming into the business and just who you were as a person, and the one that I'm talking to today?
I think the biggest difference, outside of just being a better broadcaster,
well, that's true.
At my job,
for sure.
I think after 14 years of experience, I hope that I'm pretty darn good at what I do by now, which I maybe wasn't back then. But I would say, as a person, I think I am just so much more sure of who I am, and so much more confident in myself and my abilities and my journey and, the path that God's carved out for me. And I'm so content with that path. I think the Melanie of 10 years ago really tried to write her own story and really tried to create her own path. And God would continuously go, I have a different plan for you. That's not the plan for you. And I would be so upset and so torn up. And I think now I am just so much more, I'm so light. I'm so relaxed in what God does in my life. And I sort of I've surrendered, I've said, I can't do this alone, God. I need your help, and I trust wherever you're guiding me, and I'm just going to let you guide me. And if I'm ever caught up in a time where I'm trying to control things, set me straight, you know? And I think that's probably the biggest difference between Melanie of 10 to 15 years ago and Melanie now, is I'm just very self-assured and confident and where I've been and where I'm going.
Well, hopefully the next time we have you on, I don't know when that'll be, but there'll also be a different thing because you would have gotten married by that time.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Next summer's the plan. So
Next
thank
summer,
you.
So congratulations
thank you so much
on your engagement. And this has been a real treat to talk to you. We'll be watching you every Sunday during the NFL season on CBS, and can't wait to see you again and have you back on sometime. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's truly an honor. Great seeing you, Jason.
Thanks so much for watching today on Sports Spectrum. Make sure you click that subscribe button so you don't miss any other videos. And if you want more stories on sports and faith, check out our website, sportsspectrum.com.